All right, you are good to go.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Welcome tonight to the March 24th meeting of the Arden Arcade Advisory Council. Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to call this meeting to order. I'm the chair, Colin Swearis. If I could have the clerk please call the roll.
Yes, Member Schiff,
Present.
Member Roten,
Present.
Member Suarez.
Present.
All right, so we have three of our members present with Member Biller, Member Scarla, Member Turner absent.
Right. To note that we do not have a quorum, so we cannot vote to take positions tonight. However, the only item that we have before us is an information item. So I do appreciate that. If I could ask you all to put your hands over your hearts and join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
The flag
of the United
of
States
the
of
United States of
America,
America.
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Well, since we've got a relatively short meeting and a few amount of members tonight, the introduction should go pretty quickly. My name is Colin Swearis. I'm the current chair of the Arden Arcade CPAC. I have been on the CPAC for 4 years now, and I live here in the Arden Park neighborhood. I guess the next member we have would be our Vice Chair Schiller.
Yes, thank you. Damian Schiff here. I've been on the CPAC for not quite 4 years, and I live with my family here in the Del Norte section of Arden Arcade.
Apologies, Member Schiff.
Quite all right.
It's been a long, long day for the chair. Moving next, Member Roten.
Yes, Tom Roten here. I live in Del Paso Manor with my family. I've been on the CPAC now for, I think it's approaching 6 years, so I might turn out soon.
All right, well, we're glad you're here now.
Thank you.
Okay, so concluding the announcement, introductions. I would also note that we are your neighbors, friends. We shop at your local grocery stores. This is an advisory body to inform county planning office about issues of importance to our community. So take that and appreciate that this is a volunteer position. Ask that you, if you make a comment, you do so with respect for your neighbors. Okay. Moving on, are there any announcements before the CPAC from the clerk?
Yes, this meeting is live streamed and temporarily closed to in-person public participation. The clerk's office is in the process of hosting hybrid public meetings that will provide board members and members of the public with the option to participate in the meeting either in person or remotely. Thank you for your patience and support. To make a verbal comment at today's meeting, dial 916-875-2501 and follow the prompts. When the chair opens public comment for a specific agenda item or off-agenda matter, callers will be contacted by phone and transferred into the meeting to make their public comment. Written comments are always accepted. Send your email comment to boardclerk@saccounty.net. Your comment will be routed to the board and filed in the record. And that concludes the clerk's announcement.
Clerk. All right. If there's no other pending business, let's move on to our agendized items. The first matter we have for review is the countywide rezone, item 1. Do we have Leanne Mueller or someone from the county office to present? And if there is someone there, your microphone is muted. Your microphone unmuted, Miss Mueller, but we cannot hear you still.
Yes, Leanne, I think we got her.
Okay.
Oh, it looks like you are talking. Unfortunately, we are not able to hear you. Would you do you want to try leaving the meeting and then coming back for a moment? I know we'll delay the meeting for a second, but I'm not sure any other way to remedy the situation.
In the interest of helping allow county,
Uh,
appropriate county individual to get on.
yes, I'm going to see. I see that she sent a message on here. Give me one second. Let me give her a call to see if she's having some issues with her audio on her end and see if I can help her. Give me one moment. I do apologize.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, are we successful?
I was not able to get through to her. I'm going to see if I can get through to her through Messenger. I'm not sure exactly what's happening on her end. I'm going to give one more attempt, and then we will go from there.
Okay.
All right. I do apologize. It looks like she had messaged me asking any idea when we will start. I'm not sure if she's having a connection issue. So I'm trying to see if I can assist her. Um, and then I'm going to also reach out to our assistant clerk to see what our next step would be if they are unable to.
Yeah, if we need to push it back to another
Okay.
meeting.
Oh,
Oh,
I'm sorry. I think I got my mic to work. I'm sorry.
oh
all
no,
right.
you are fine. We are happy to hear you.
Okay,
Well, I am
success.
sorry. I was the one who was holding up the meeting. My apologies.
All right. Well, since we have you here, by all means, please present.
All right. I'm happy to present to you guys tonight. So I wanted to let you know that this is a workshop item. So this is the initial step in the countywide rezone process that we're doing. I'm Leanne Mueller. I am principally working on this project, and the idea behind this is that in the presentation, I'll be providing some background on how we got to where we are in the rezone program and steps going forward with this program. So if we could move on to slide 2, please. So this slide details the projected housing needs and how they are calculated for Sacramento County, which is the actual reason why we're doing this rezone program. So the housing element is the county's plan for meeting its share of the regional housing need. This process is called the Regional Housing Needs Assessment and then the Regional Housing Needs Determination. We typically refer to it at the county as the RHNA. And so it starts basically at the state level with the Department of Housing and Community Development calculating the overall future housing needs for each region in the state over the planning period. In this case, we are in the 2021 through 2029 planning period. Then what happens is it gets sent down to the Regional Council of Governments. In our case, it's the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, which is SACOG, and then they distribute the 100 and almost 54,000 units among basically the cities and counties in the SACOG region. So then as they do that, SACOG was essentially responsible for distributing those units, and Sacramento County is ultimately responsible for the 21,272 units. Next slide, please. So essentially, this is how Sacramento's 21,272 units broke out. You will see that we have the lower income units, which is 7,158, the moderate income, which is 4,186, and then above moderate, which is almost 10,000 units. So essentially how that ultimately breaks out is that the lower income category, we kind of merged them together into the lower income, but that includes the extremely low income, very low income, and the low income categories. And then when you get up into moderate, basically we have a surplus, so moderate, we are good there. And then when you get into above moderate income, we also have a surplus, but essentially above moderate income, those are basically the single family homes that you will see in your typical subdivision. So what we're focusing on with our rezone is largely our lower income and a little bit of our moderate income requirements. So we have appropriately zoned sites to accommodate a slightly over 4,000 units, 4,274. And our RHNA is 7,158. So we have a current shortfall of 2,884 units. Next slide, please. So when we talk about extremely low, very low, low income, and moderate income, in the workshop that information we provided, we do have the actual income ranges, but what we're trying to show with this slide is basically the percent of the area median income, and then basically who that is, who that equates to in our community. So you'll see for extremely low income is 30% of the area median income, and it's typically those that are either do not have an income or those that are on fixed incomes. Usually they're retired people or they're on disability. And then we get into the very low income, which is up to 50% of our area median income. And then those are people that are like food preparation and servicing, personal care. Then you get into low income, which is 80%, which is where you get the sales and retail, healthcare support, office workers, that type of thing. And then we have moderate income, which is 120% of the area median income. And that's where you get into some of your professionals like teachers, librarians, social service workers, that type of thing. Next slide, please. So while preparing for the 2021 through 2029 housing element, the deficit was identified. And so as a result of that, the county had to adopt Program A1, which has been adopted by the Board of Supervisors. And so basically within that, it basically says that we are going to have this deficit, and it basically shows the steps of what we are going to do within that. And this actually is fairly programmatic, except for the acreage, which is the 165 acres. And then, and basically it tells us that we have to have a density that allows at least 30 dwelling units per acre. That is set by state law for Sacramento County as a metropolitan region. And then it basically tells us that the sites have to be large enough to accommodate at least 16 units. And then basically if they are at least 20% affordable units, then we have to work to make those uses by right. And then the other one is that we have to identify rezones equivalent to 30% of the remaining lower income RHNA along commercial corridors in moderate, high, and highest resource areas. This was actually something that is set now, and we spent a lot of time negotiating that with the state, and that is actually a pretty critical component of our rezone program. Next slide, please. So a few things that we want people to understand as we are rezoning is that the requirement of the county is that we have to provide the appropriately zoned land. So we have to provide enough land, that 165 acres at a minimum of RD30 or another designation that would support multifamily housing. So that's what we're trying to achieve through this rezone program. The property owner is not actually required to build the affordable housing, nor is the county, and it just has to be made available. So that is the third point that we have to do. We have to make the sites available to accommodate affordable housing, or they themselves have to be available by the nature of them, which is why we don't choose sites that are already heavily developed or that there would be a fundamental issue associated with their development for multifamily residential, which can reduce the pool of sites that we have available to us. Next slide, please. So what you're looking at here is our rezone strategy. So the first step is we need to rezone land for multifamily at 30 units per acre. So where we get to that is that that is the minimum density that has been set to us by the state. And then so what we're looking to do is rezone existing residential sites within the county that allow multifamily development at 20 dwelling units per acre and rezone those up to 30 dwelling units per acre. We do have quite a few that were previously on our inventory at 20 dwelling units per acre that we had to drop off because we dropped down to meeting the moderate requirement because they no longer met that criteria. The other thing we're looking to do is rezone sites along corridors to allow 30 dwelling units per acre. So we're specifically looking at areas of the county that are more heavily developed, that are more the urban type areas versus rural or even to some extent suburban. So we also have to defer to the requirements in state law. So we're looking to rezone sites that are at least 0.8 acres so that we can get to that 16 unit minimum, but they have to be less than 10 acres in size. They need to have access to infrastructure in the planning period. So water, sewer, dry utilities, And it is ideal if they have access to transportation services, commercial services, and even things like parks and schools if they're in close proximity to those. Another thing that we are proposing to do is that we need to change some of our zoning code density ranges, especially for those that are in the 20 and 30 dwelling unit per acre. Essentially what we need to do is, right now we have it as a maximum. We need to take the language out that talks about maximum. And then one of the other things, as you noticed in the previous slide, we had talked about the 30% in certain areas. So we have a focus on those opportunity areas, and I'll go into that in more detail as we go through the presentation. So next slide, please. So when we talk about going 20 dwelling units per acre to 30 dwelling units per acre, we wanted to provide images of what that looks like, because sometimes I think when you talk about dwelling units per acre, it can be a little bit nebulous. So this is a slide with examples of multifamily projects at 20 units per acre. So this is the Anton Arcade Apartments, and then it is also a mutual housing Habitat for Humanity development. And those are actually, I'm sorry, these are SEMO Circle Apartments and the Orange Grove Apartments, and they're both right around 20 dwelling units per acre. Next slide, please. Okay, these are the slides that are the Anton Arcade and then an affordable project for mutual housing and Habitat for Humanity. And these are actually much closer to 30 dwelling units per acre. So essentially for both of these projects, you're looking at essentially about a 3-story apartment building associated with those. But again, there's not a noticeable difference between 20 and 30. Next slide, please. So when I was talking about the opportunity areas or the high and moderate resource areas, this map illustrates that fairly well. Essentially, there's something called a Tcac map, and it is in your packet, and the state generated it, and it basically broke the county into 5 areas: high segregation and poverty, which is essentially some areas of Arden Arcade, South Sacramento, and some areas of North Highlands. Then you get into the lower resource areas, which can be some areas of North Highlands, some areas of Rio Linda, Alberta, and then kind of the vineyard area. And then you get into the moderate, high, and highest resource areas. There's not much of county in the highest resource areas, which is the dark blue, that actually also meets the criteria for rezoning that we went over on the previous slide. So that is a bit of a challenge. So what we're then doing is we're focusing on moderate and high. So you'll see that there are some areas of Arden Arcade, Fair Oaks, Orangevale, Cordova that meet that criteria, and a little bit of Vineyard that meet that criteria. So essentially what the county is required to do is affirmatively furthering fair housing sites. So the idea is that you don't place all of your affordable housing sites in the areas that have the low resources or high segregation and poverty. And then that is where we had to commit to the state for 30% of our rezoned sites in those areas. Next slide, please. So this is the Arden Arcade Map. And what we wanted to show is that we have identified potential rezoned sites. And there's 6 separate parcels, but it's about 5 or so sites. And you can kind of see by this that we did try and choose sites in the Arden Arcade community that are either in the moderate or the high resource areas. And you may have also noticed that really there's not that many sites in the Arden Arcade community that we're having as a potential rezone. And part of the reason for that is, again, based on the criteria that is identified, it is hard to find sites that meet that criteria. We were struggling to find like non-vacant sites that are, basically 0.85 acres and higher. So with that concludes staff's presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have at this point.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, and appreciate the detail you went, and glad you were able to join us. So at this point,
I'm sorry about that.
Oh, not a problem. These things, they happen. Okay. Are there any comments or questions from members of the committee?
Yes, member Roten here. I noticed the one on, I actually know most of these sites that are highlighted very well. The one that's there by Monroe, it is a vacant lot, is it not?
Yes, it is. It is
So
like it's like two little vacant lots.
Yeah, that has been vacant for 40 years. I mean, it's an odd. Like that one in particular, I noticed that the one on Marconi is actually currently it's a church. Is that
Yes?
okay?
The one on Marconi, the church actually reached out to us about doing affordable housing on that property. So we agreed to include them in the rezone program to help them facilitate their desire to develop affordable housing on that site.
Okay. The other one that's off of Marconi and Fulton, that's actually what used to be like the Graphic Hobby House, University Art. That center is just the parking lot that's behind it. That is.
There's a 1 acre underutilized parking lot. Yeah.
Okay. And then the one on Watt Avenue is actually in my neighborhood, so I know that one. That was a very kind of like not quite a strip mall, but like strip businesses that was torn down several years ago and has just been vacant since. So, I mean, is part of this to try to incentivize these property owners to redevelop this space because there would be profitability in having it be 30 units versus 20?
That's part of the thought. The sites that because Arden Arcade is such a developed out community already, it's a challenge, honestly, to find vacant sites that are large. Like you will notice, I think the largest one on our list is the church, and it is a church site and is partially developed. So the thought was they're vacant. They appear to be underutilized. We're trying to see if like the business, right? We know that it has BP zoning, which is a business professional type zoning, so it would allow for offices, but they don't seem to be building back offices. So the thought is maybe if we rezoned it to RD30, there would be some incentive for them to develop multifamily residential there.
Okay, so I mean that was kind of where I was going. It's just that obviously the idea is that it would be cheaper for a property owner to develop a vacant lot than it would be to tear down and revitalize a current existing, say, RD20 location. Is that correct?
That's correct. And then part of the state requirements are that they want you to rely on vacant lots.
Okay, so
that's actually part of the state requirements. So it's twofold. One, generally we can't assume that people are necessarily going to tear down a viable site, and two, the state really wants us to find vacant sites to put in our land inventory.
So what is the actual amount of acreage that is been earmarked in Arden Arcade? Because obviously that is not 165 acres. So there's got to be.
Yeah, so the thing is we're choosing sites throughout the county. So realistically, I think in Arden Arcade you're looking at about 5 acres.
I mean, we've talked about this in the CPAC over the course of the years that I've been on it, where, I mean, the problem is that Arden Arcade it's nearly completely built out. How do you get either more tax revenue out of this area? How do you do this or this or this or whatever else? But yeah, so trying to earmark and find vacant, underutilized proper parcels is going to be extremely difficult. I mean, for one, I think if this moves ahead and it incentivizes in some way these property owners to redevelop these sites, or actually not redevelop, just develop, would be huge, because I mean those have been, like I said, most of these have been vacant, underutilized spaces for
Right.
years. So to
I
see
mean,
something come of it would be fantastic.
that's the thought. I mean, and the other thought is that just to some extent, if we were able to get the property owner to work with an affordable developer, somebody who has the expertise in building affordable housing, then we would have a better chance of getting it done. And the other thing is, by having the zoning in place, we're also hoping that it takes off a regulatory burden and a cost burden.
So I guess my last comment here is just, so if somebody were to propose one of these things, and
Mm-hmm.
would that end up coming back to this CPAC? Because it would be interesting. I again, over the
Mm-hmm.
number of years, we have seen a lot of NIMBYs, not in my backyard, right? You see a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people, especially in these higher resources areas, that are not going to be real interested in having low income or affordable housing put into their neighborhood. So I'm just curious, like, what are the steps to kind of minimize the community feedback from that, from the county's
Well,
perspective? I mean, does it just go ahead, or does it still come up for discussion?
so the rezone itself, this is a workshop, right? So we still have to, and we're using this as an opportunity to go out, see if there's strong objection to sites, see if anybody else has any other great sites in mind that county staff has missed, right? Obviously, we don't. I mean, we have a pretty good idea, but we don't know exactly what everybody's intention is with their land. And then the other thing is that we would be going through and doing the full CEQA review, going to the Board of Supervisors, Planning Commission, and CPAC for recommendations on the rezone project. But once they get rezoned, it takes a lot of the discretion out of those projects. Like, to some extent, if they were complying with the zoning and building a multifamily project, it could be developed to some extent with a design review, which would not necessarily go to the CPAC.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Which is
Um,
which is why we're trying to do heavy outreach now.
right. Well, I mean, so does it have to be, as part of the rezone? Is it just residential that can be rezoned to it, or can you rezone other things to RD30?
We can rezone other things, like, for example, the site that you had indicated as the strip mall. That actually has BP zoning currently, so we're taking it from kind of a commercial type use and proposing for it to go to RD30.
Okay.
But that being said, in a lot of our commercial districts, you can already build residential anyway.
Okay. Well, I was going to
So,
suggest, I mean, clearly Country Club Plaza has had its issues and is looking to redevelop in some way. But I mean, like, is that an area that could have that kind of change?
I mean, we looked at it, but I mean, and if the property owner was willing, but when I was looking at them based on kind of Country Club Plaza, that's the Macy's one, right?
That's correct.
Okay. I've actually had a lot of I've actually over the years dealt with that property owner a lot, and I just wasn't personally seeing that happening. But if he was willing, I think we could entertain that.
Okay, that was going to be my suggestion. So you know better than I do, and you had more experience. So that's my 2 cents, and that's my questions.
Okay.
So member Roten out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Member Roten. Question from Member Schiff. Anything?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the presentation. My first question is, when do you estimate that a final decision will be made on the proposed rezoning?
So our statutory requirement to have that complete is May of 2024, I believe. But obviously, we're trying to be a little over a year out on this and getting it completed. Just because the longer it takes, the more chance of us not of things changing and not having it be exactly as we planned. So the sooner we can get it done, the better. So I would like to have it be a little over a year. Like I'm hoping for like 14 to 16 months.
So you think that perhaps by the middle of 2023 that it'll be completed?
That's what my goal is, yes.
Okay. All right. I'm curious with respect to the parcel on Marconi that is currently a church. Do you know offhand whether the church is interested? Are they thinking about sort of just decamping from the site, or are they thinking about using some of the existing open space on their property for purposes of development?
I mean, the conversations that I have had, and again, these are conversations would lead me to believe they're not planning on decamping, that they're planning on utilizing their open space.
I see. And with respect to the differentiation between highest resources and high and moderate and what have you, what are the resources that are going into that assessment?
So these maps they're designations that are generated by the state. So it's generally crafted based on income, education, and environmental concerns is essentially the large thing. So the higher the income and education of the residents based on, I think, probably census tracts and such, the better the resource area is.
I see. Then I guess my last question is just in general terms, how many other parcels within the Arden Arcade area did you at least do some sort of analysis of and then decided that they wouldn't make the first or second cut?
Actually, I don't have the number, but we have been tracking kind of sites as they've dropped off. I know that at least a couple dropped off of it, and I think it was a little bit due to size, and then we were sure there would be neighborhood opposition, so we didn't want to jeopardize the whole rezone based on like one parcel or something. So at least a couple did drop off from my recollection.
I see. Okay. Well, then I guess just my last question is, just if I were a person who owned one of these parcels and I were interested in developing affordable housing on them, but let's say that the county wasn't going through this process, and so I, as the owner of the property, would have to then initiate the rezoning. Would that be particularly more challenging for me than what the county is doing now. I guess what I'm getting at is if I were a property owner, is this really, you know, given my desire to develop, this is really quite a blessing because the county is now doing stuff that otherwise I would have had to have paid for with consultants, or is it really not that significant of a benefit?
It actually is a fairly significant benefit to a property owner, especially for somebody who maybe has a small property, because a rezone can be a fairly expensive endeavor. It requires a person to do a CEQA analysis, and then it goes to the Board of Supervisors for approval. And so generally general plan amendments and rezones are some of the more costly application processes that the county has. So because of the amount of work that goes into them.
I see. Okay, well, thank you very much for your answers. They're very informative, and that's all for me.
All right. Thank you, Member Schiff. A fantastic conversation, and at this time, I have nothing to add to it. So thank you, Ms. Fuller, for joining us. It is much appreciated.
I wanted to say thank you for your time, and sorry for my microphone issues this evening.
Not a problem. Thank you again. All right. Moving on to item 2, staff update. Clerk, is there an update from county staff?
I do not have any announcements from the clerk's office.
All right. Moving to the council. Do any council members have comments? Items not before us tonight. Member
Oden does not.
This is Member Schiff. I just have one quick question for the county. At the start, we mentioned the process of adopting hybrid procedures for partial in-person meetings. Do we have any sense as to when that might happen with respect to the CPACs?
So right now, from what I was told, that a correspondence regarding in-person meetings is going to be sent out to members of the CPAC once more information has been finalized and provided.
Okay, thank you very much.
Of course.
All right, took the question right out of my mouth. All right, so since I have no comment, moving on to item 4. Do we have any public comments about items not before us on the agenda tonight?
I'm looking at the queue, and it doesn't look like we have any public comments in the queue.
All right, well, then I am going to call for adjournment. Hearing no opposition, motion is made and carried. So thank you all for joining with us tonight. We are adjourned.
Thank you so much, and thank you for everybody for being patient during all the technical problems.
All right,
No
have
problem.
a good evening.
Thank you. Good night.
You too. Bye-bye.